Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're undertaking an intellectual mandate, really, one that sort of flips the traditional understanding of belief on its head.
We are.
We're executing a forensic deep dive into the work of J.R. Ahmed, specifically his rigorous logical framework, the Sovereign Intellect.
And our mission here, it isn't abstract philosophy. It's strictly about epistemology, the study of knowledge itself.
Yeah.
We're looking at the premise that the search for the divine isn't mystical. It's an exercise in pure reason.
Built on verifiable, objective evidence.
Exactly.
So that immediately defines the sovereign intellect, not as, some vague metaphor, but as the foundational, rational principle, the uncaused cause.
The uncaused cause that dictates the architecture of existence.
And for you listening, this means we're treating faith itself as a logical conclusion. It's a derivation from evidence, not an initial assumption you just have to make.
That is such a critical distinction. It sets the stage for what he calls an intellectual duty. This whole investigation is built around the concept of the ayah.
The sign, the proof, the criterion.
Right. And Ahmed's framework insists that every single element in creation,
Right.
from a quantum fluctuation up to a galaxy, functions as a law-governed, undeniable proof. It's an exhibit.
An exhibit designed to be studied by the human intellect.
Precisely.
Which is powerful. It ties directly to that foundational command we found in Surah Fussilat 41.53. We will show them our signs in the horizons and within themselves until it becomes clear to them that it is the truth.
And that's not just gentle encouragement. I mean, that's a scientific research program written directly into the mandate.
It is a command for systematic observation.
And the goal is rational clarity. Certainty, built upon facts you can actually verify. What's so significant here is that this elevates the human intellect, the Alcuin scientific inquiry, to a primary form of worship.
You're commanded to use the tools you were given, the senses and logic, to get to that clarity.
And this just fundamentally rejects blind faith.
Or inherited faith.
The burden of proof is shifted. It's on the measurable reality of the universe. If you can't rationally verify your belief against the observable laws of existence, well, then the belief itself is inherently suspect. It's the ultimate assertion of objectivity. And to really grasp this, we have to use the analogy Ahmed provides. The symphony.
The symphony, okay.
The sovereign intellect is the composer.
And creation, then, is the score. Meticulously crafted, mathematically perfect. Every fixed law, every constant. That's the law of creation. Fixed, precise, knowable.
An elegant system. And we, mankind, are assigned the role of the trustee, the Khalifa.
The performers.
Performers. We are required to rigorously study the score, the laws of creation, to understand the composer's intent, and then to execute the piece correctly.
So physics, ethics, they're not optional subjects. They're the required homework.
For our performance review, yes.
That sets the expectation perfectly. So let's move to the methodology of proof. How does the trustee build this certainty?
The framework establishes two inseparable domains of science. Let's start with domain A, the horizons, or the Afāq, the external cosmos.
The Afāq, so everything external.
Yes, observable reality, astrophysics, chemistry, geology, physical law. And the primary revelation of the Afāq is the undeniable proof of singular sovereignty, or Tawhid.
And Tawhid here isn't just oneness, it's more like systemic coherence. How does the cosmos prove that with such rigor?
Well, it demonstrates the necessity of logical non-contradiction. I mean, think about the fine-tuning of cosmological constants, the strength of the electromagnetic force versus gravity, for instance.
Right.
If those values shifted by even an infinitesimal fraction, complex chemistry, stars, life, it would all just vanish.
So the argument is, if you had multiple competing divine wills, say one setting the law of gravity and another trying to set the laws of quantum mechanics.
You'd get chaos,
Yeah.
dissonance. The cosmic score would be unplayable.
Instability.
Exactly. The fact that the entire universe operates under these universal, unvarying laws that we can predict an eclipse centuries from now with micron-level precision, that's the ultimate physical argument against fragmented governance.
The stability of the horizons proves the logical necessity of Tawhid. There can only be one legislative source.
One composer.
And this is where that intellectual duty of the Khalifa really comes into focus, because an outsider might see a scientist studying particle physics and think, well, that's outside the realm of faith.
But this framework insists on the absolute opposite. The scientist isn't negating the divine. They are systematically studying the legislative blueprint of the sovereign intellect.
So science and mathematics, they're the fundamental tools given to the trustee.
Yes. When an engineer relies on the predictable behavior of structural steel, they are relying on the consistency of the ayah. Studying these laws with rigor is the mandated worship.
So understanding natural law becomes a theological necessity, but that's only half the argument, isn't it? The Afāq needs the internal reality.
It does. We move from the outer mirror to the inner. Domain B, within ourselves, the Anfus, the internal cosmos.
Biology, psychology, consciousness, and moral law.
And moral law.
So what's the internal evidence that provides that same level of rigorous proof we see in the cosmos?
Well, we're commanded to look at our own formation. Scale isn't the only measure of complexity. Look at the human genome. 3 billion base pairs.
A structure we still can't fully comprehend, let alone replicate.
Or the neural network in your brain, the self-correcting system giving rise to consciousness. These systems operate with a fidelity and complexity that just transcends our own capabilities.
It's the internal evidence of the intelligent designer.
And crucially, the Anfus contains the moral structure. This is maybe the most difficult ayah to study.
Because it involves studying the self. Where does that inherent human capacity for justice, for adl, come from?
Let's use a concrete example.
Okay.
Imagine you witness a sudden, blatant act of cruelty, something truly unjust, that immediate visceral revulsion you feel. That's a consistent moral law written into the human agent. It's nearly universal.
That sense of accountability, the constant internal struggle between ethical duty and self-interest?
That is a verifiable sign. If we were just higher-order animals driven only by self-interest, that sense of justice would be arbitrary. It would be conditional.
But it's not. The presence of conscience, the value we place on adl, it points to an external source of ethical standards, one just as fixed as the laws of planetary motion.
The Afāq proves the systemic coherence, the singularity of the law.
And the Anfus proves the mandate, the duty placed on the one observing that law. They are two inseparable halves of the objective revelation.
And that clarity leads us right to the central distinction of this framework.
Which is its explicit rejection of obscurity. This has to be a hard line, right? If faith is a conclusion of reason.
There's no room for the unverifiable, the arbitrary. That is the defining structure. Objective revelation is fixed and publicly verifiable. It's found in the law of creation, the fitra.
The laws of physics and the ethical system in the scripture.
Right. So any belief that demands you reject verifiable, reality-established scientific fact is inherently suspect. It contradicts the creator's own methodology of proof.
I want to focus on the practical immunity this grants the believer. When the trustee accepts that the universe operates on fixed, verifiable laws, what the source calls Sunnat Allah.
The consistent way of God.
Right. It fundamentally changes how they approach uncertainty.
It creates an immunity to superstition, irrationality. Superstitious systems thrive on the idea that natural laws can be, bypassed or subverted by an inert object.
A charm, an amulet, some secret knowledge from a fortune teller.
And so every time someone relies on that, they're fundamentally denying the coherence of reality. Yeah. They're denying the fixed score of the composer.
Logically, yes. If the sovereign intellect demands fixed, predictable law for the cosmos and fixed moral standards for the human agent, the idea that a piece of brass can interrupt that seamless system.
It's an intellectual affront to the consistency of the composer. The universe is a system of law, not a series of convenient exceptions.
Okay, so we've established certainty through observation. The final, critical step is what Ahmed calls the trustee's duty to act.
The so what?
The ultimate so what.
Contemplation has to flow into implementation. When you perceive the truth of this systemic coherence, that perception demands active responsibility. You can't just admire the score, you have to play it.
And this is where the cosmic law flows directly into ethical law. True societal justice, adl, has to model itself on the perfection and constancy we see in the universe.
Exactly. If celestial bodies move with absolute predictability and reliability, if the cosmic system is one of unwavering law,
then our human systems, courts, governments, social contracts, they must operate with that same unwavering ethical constancy.
Inconsistency in law isn't just a moral error, it's a violation of the cosmic model itself.
So observing the signs isn't a philosophical hobby. It is the absolute prerequisite for building a just society, the blueprint for righteous work, Amal Salih.
Absolutely. The goal is a twofold duty. First, use the scientific laws from the horizons, the Afāq, to build a functional civilization.
To advance human capability under fixed laws. Second, use the moral laws from within themselves, the Anfus, to govern that civilization justly, to make sure human law mirrors the constancy of natural law.
The contemplation of the signs, then, is the engine. It drives the rational human from uncertainty to the implementation of a just world.
It is the ultimate systemic culmination.
So to synthesize this for you listening, in the sovereign intellect framework, Faith isn't a leap into the dark. It's achieved by a rigorous study of verifiable reality, the horizons and the internal self.
And this study proves that faith is a necessary logical conclusion of reason, one that demands absolute intellectual duty from the trustee.
Okay.
And if we connect that synthesis to the bigger picture, this concept of systemic coherence implies something with tremendous logical weight.
Which is?
If the entire observable cosmos relies on unwavering, predictable, fixed law to avoid chaotic collapse, what does the necessary rigidity of the moral law, the internal Anfus, imply about the severity of ethical deviation?
And what does that rigidity suggest about the predictability of its ultimate, inescapable consequence? The consequence of choosing dissonance over coherence. A profound question for the rational mind to contemplate.